I think that topic of resistance is interesting. Like I'm wrapping up training to do this Nepal trip. And in the beginning, like if you went rewound 3 months, the beginning of the training was really fun. Like it was fun to be back out on the hill. The sun was out, all of the stuff, right? Like it was fun to get the boots back on and throw the backpack on and start doing that work. It felt really good. And then you get to a point, and this hit me about 2 weeks ago, where it's not fun anymore. Like it's that time of year where it's starting to get dark in the mornings. So now you're driving to the hill and it's pitch black. You're standing at the bottom of the hill for your workout and it's still black. And you're in the dark with headlamps on to do this training that you don't really feel like doing. You don't feel like getting out of bed. And there's a lot of resistance. And then a lot of it, honestly, is just in your own head. Like I'm fighting with myself to get out of bed and go show up. And similar to what you were talking about, I've got accountability. Like there's a group of guys waiting out there for me to show up, which is some days that's all that gets me out of bed, is knowing that there's guys out there. But I think the resistance is generally in life a good sign. I think it's a sign that you're making some moves and doing some stuff that's going to change. So it's part of transformation. Whatever that transformation is going to be, there's going to be some resistance involved. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Grit Meets Growth podcast, where we bring you inspiration and insights focused on getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. If you enjoy the messages you're hearing here, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of the podcast. With that, let's get after it. How's your morning going?
Is it morning? Feel like it's early morning, and I feel like I've gotten a lot accomplished today, and the day has just begun.
Same. It's it feels good when you're recording early and there's already a track record of stuff that's been accomplished. I'm in the exact same boat. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Did you make your bed this morning?
I did
First
make
step.
my bed.
Task number 1 completed.
Yep. And like McCraven says, now you come back to it at the end of the day and you can see it, and no matter what happens, you made your bed. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. First thing, on the way to the gym. Back at it.
How was the gym this morning?
It was awesome. Like got a new workout partner. New lifting partner. So it's been a lot of fun. We laugh a lot. It's a good accountability, and back at it, really full time in the gym. I was kind of hit and miss for a few months there. It's good to be back at it. Feels good to actually be a little sore.
I love that you used the words accountability and laugh in the same sentence. Way too many times we think about accountability and discipline. This is going to suck. And accountability and discipline don't have to suck. They can be fun. They can include laughter, a little bit of humor, a little bit of enjoyment. Like you can enjoy the process. That's phenomenal, man.
Well, it is, because the reality is, like, we talk about the definition of discipline being doing the things that you hate to do. And really digging in on those. And yeah, nobody really honestly wants to go to the gym 5:30 in the morning. But if you've got that accountability partner and somebody there, it makes that discipline much easier.
As you've been back in the gym and you've kind of been getting back into this routine, you feeling any resistance to it? Because it's a combination probably of it feels really good, and probably some resistance. I'm curious about that.
Oh, there was certainly a fight this morning, internal, right? All I wanted to do was roll over and stay in bed, right? So yeah, there's absolutely that resistance. And, becomes easy in that situation to begin to self-sabotage yourself. Right. And that's what led me down this path of not going to the gym consistently a while back, was just the self-sabotage. Oh, you're fine. You'll just do this workout. You'll be good. Yeah, you need the rest. Just, and just making excuses and sabotaging myself. And again, putting a foot down, realizing that, putting a foot down and going, all right, it's time to change. What do I need to do to change this? And coming up with a new game plan. Right? There's going to be times in your life where the game plan that you've been running doesn't work anymore, man. The competition is on to you. You're onto it. Your self-sabotage kicks in. Like, change up the game. Run some new plays.
I think that topic of resistance is interesting. Like I'm wrapping up training to do this Nepal trip. And in the beginning, like if you rewound 3 months, the beginning of the training was really fun. Like it was fun to be back out on the hill. The sun was out, all of the stuff, right? Like it was fun to get the boots back on and throw the backpack on and start doing that work. It felt really good. And then you get to a point, and this hit me about 2 weeks ago, where it's not fun anymore. Like it's that time of year where it's starting to get dark in the mornings. So now you're driving to the hill and it's pitch black. You're standing at the bottom of the hill for your workout and it's still black. And you're in the dark with headlamps on to do this training that you don't really feel like doing. You don't feel like getting out of bed. And there's a lot of resistance. And a lot of it, honestly, is just in your own head. Like I'm fighting with myself to get out of bed and go show up. And similar to what you were talking about, I've got accountability. Like there's a group of guys waiting out there for me to show up, which is some days that's all that gets me out of bed, is knowing that there's guys out there. But I think the resistance is generally in life a good sign. I think it's a sign that you're making some moves and doing some stuff that's going to change. So it's part of transformation. Whatever that transformation is going to be, there's going to be some resistance involved.
For sure. Yeah, I challenge anybody to, think about their current situation. Think about, points in your life where you are seeing success, and think about what are those conversations you're having internally with yourself and had leading up to that. I was reading this thing this morning. Actually, I think Kurt had posted it. It's from a book that he's reading, and talking about learning to fly, and that this hiker comes upon this butterfly cocoon, right? And the butterfly is trying to get out of the cocoon to begin flying. And the hiker sees the butterfly struggling to get out of the cocoon. So he pulls out his Boy Scout knife and his scissors, and he starts clipping away at the cocoon in order to help out the butterfly. Well, unfortunately, butterflies need that struggle of getting out of the cocoon in order to push the fluid out into their wings so that they can fly. So, unbeknownst to this hiker, thinking he's helping this butterfly out, he actually kept the butterfly from ever being able to fly. And I think there's two main pieces of that story that are critical. Just because somebody's struggling doesn't mean they need help. Maybe they just need a little cheering on. And secondly, the struggle is what the key to this whole piece is, right? We need to struggle in order to fly. We need to struggle in order to achieve those goals. Struggle is where the magic happens.
If I go back and I look at anything in my life that I've accomplished that I'm proud of, it came with a struggle. There is nothing on the list, whether it's been raising my kids through a divorce or starting a business or that first trip to Nepal. None of it was easy. There's nothing memorable in my life that I'm excited to talk to people about that came without some challenges and some moments where I'm like, I don't know if I can get through this. I don't know if I'm strong enough for it. This feels terrible right now, and I just need to grind through it. And I think that's like,
Well, but did you at that point, did you really say I just need to grind through it, or you just say I want to throw in the towel?
I think you get to pick, because I think that's the fork in the road for sure.
Well, for sure it is, right?
Yeah.
But how
Yeah.
many times do we get to that point and go, this is tough. Like I'm throwing in the towel. Right? We've all been there. Like none of us are successful in every aspect of what comes at us, right? So you're right. There are those decision points that happen.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes we don't choose right? Sometimes we do like stop. And sometimes we stop like 2 steps short of where the success is, right? Keep going, right? That is the only way, is to keep going. Find the struggle and keep going.
I think that's one of my biggest fears, in all honesty, is that I'm going to stop something 2 feet short of the prize. Because I think a lot of times the further you get down the path toward whatever it is you want to achieve, whatever that goal is, I think it reminds me a little bit of like a truck pull. Or you ever seen those where the truck is pulling a weight on the back of a trailer, and the further it goes, the heavier the weight gets. And so eventually it just stops because it can only carry so much weight. I feel like goals can be like that sometimes. Just because you're further down the path toward achieving a goal does not mean it's going to get easy all of a sudden and you're going to coast all the way to the finish line. There's been a lot of moments in life where the further I got, the closer I got to that goal, the harder things got. You train for a marathon. Those last training runs, 16, 18, 20 miles long, they're the hardest runs you're going to do in your entire training. It doesn't get easier, it gets harder, but it's part of the preparation. And I think it's kind of what you're talking about.
For sure. And it goes back to the last episode when we talked about goals and really defining those goals, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago. I don't quite remember, but right, defining them appropriately. So you know what those metrics of achievement are along the way. So it's not just the final goal, right? You're putting in those milestone markers. And once you achieve each one of those milestones, you know you're headed towards the right one. But each one of those milestones gets more difficult. It should anyway, on your path to achieving your final goal. Right? So just focusing on that next step in front of you.
And I think as you're stepping, focusing on the voices that you're listening to along the way. I think the voice in our own head, that self-criticism, the fear, all those things that rise up as we're working on this, those things that make us want to throw in the towel, we need to listen to those and discern those really carefully to make sure that they're the right voices we're listening to. And then on the flip side, you've got the outside voices that are chirping as well, saying, hey, like, I see you, I just want to protect you. Maybe you should stop. Maybe you should throw in the towel. Maybe you should slow down. Those can be just as dangerous as that inner voice. I mean, I think you got to balance both of them.
Well, I think if anything involves any of that internal conversation as you're moving along through life around resistance, denial, self-sabotage, self-criticism, fear, if any of those things are barking in your ear, in your head, keep going. That means you're pointed in the right direction. Right? Those feelings mean something. They mean that you're pushing up against the patterns and conditioning held within your unconscious, right? Those are things that you're pushing beyond anywhere that you've ever been before, and your body's going, I don't know what to do with this. You're on that cusp of change, right? You're on that 2 steps from success. Keep going.
But it goes back to that butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
Like the butterfly has to struggle to get out of the cocoon. The struggle is part of the metamorphosis and getting to that next stage. It has to go through the struggle, and we're exactly the same.
Well, without the struggle, the butterfly doesn't fly, dude. That's all it wants to do is fly. And without the struggle, it can't do that.
I like that point that you made earlier about not necessarily diving in to help the butterfly. Because I'm reeling through that in my head a little bit. And how many times have I jumped in either trying to be the superhero because I thought that was going to feel good for me, like it's going to pad my ego a little bit, I got to be a superhero, or just you see somebody struggling, you just want to fix it for them. Like as a guy, I am wired to fix stuff all the time. Christina would echo that for sure. And there's plenty of times where she doesn't want to fix, she just wants somebody to listen. You said it exactly right. She wants somebody to cheer her on, not come in and cut her loose from the cocoon. And I'm like, I got the scissors out and the saw and the knife and all of the stuff. I'm like, I'm going to cut you loose because that's going to be more comfortable for you. She doesn't need that. She wants me to cheer her on. That's powerful that you said that. And I probably needed to hear that. So
it's the same concept that applies for your trip. Same thing. Right?
Yeah. We were talking about it before this.
Right.
Leading a team of guys through Nepal, everybody comes into it in a different stage, different preparation level, different leadership level. Like everybody comes into it with their own stuff, their own voices. And to rather than drag them through the trip, which I could certainly do, to cheer them on through the trip and lift them up and elevate them as they go on the trip. That's the key to the whole thing. And that,
well, it is, but it's also the struggle for them, right? Because they're not, and think about your first trip last year, right? And the struggle that you went through there. That's where your growth comes from. That's where the experience and the joy of the experience comes from, is that struggle. Because you're busting down those inner walls, right? You're pushing through those fears, that denial, that self-sabotage in your head, and you're pushing through that and building, right? Your goalpost continues to move when you do that. Right? As soon as you knock down those inner walls and find your authentic self, the afterburners kick in and you start to see that shift happening, right? Those goalposts move. And so, for your folks that, you're leading on this trip, it's very similar to that. They need to find some of their own inner struggle in prep and in the trip as they go on it. Like you as the leader can't take all of that struggle away from them, right? Because they're not going to experience the growth then.
I think this is like an aha moment for me as I'm getting ready to go on this trip, is that I think as a leader, and I think about it in work, I think about it in home, I think about it in Nepal, like we want to eliminate the hurdles and eliminate the struggles for the people around us. Like I want this trip to go as smooth as possible for the guys that I'm going to be traveling with. Some of the challenges I went through last year, I want them to be able to skip those challenges and just have an amazing trip. But to your point, them skipping the challenges does not do them any good. They need to experience those challenges the same as I did, so that they can grow and enjoy the experience the same as I did. If I remove all of those for them, it sanitizes the trip and it's not the same. They won't get as much out of it if I remove all of those challenges.
Your goal is actually to lead them through the challenges. It's to walk side by side with them. You've already experienced it. Walk through them as a guide. Right? You think about the word guide. I don't know if you've ever gone out and had a fishing guide or, of that sort, right? They're there with you. They're doing the activity with you. They've already done it. They've already experienced that, but they're next to you, walking the path with you.
I think the key to that is they're next to you. They're not out in front of you. They're next to you. Probably sometimes they're behind you and letting you develop your own leadership and lead on your own. But I think there are moments where we think about leadership and we're like, okay, I'm like 5 yards out in front of everybody and I'm like cut through the jungle for them. side by side is definitely the way to go. Do it with them rather than for them, and then let them do some of it on their own and experience for the first time on their own. Yeah. Like I said, that's
it's a lead by example scenario, right? I mean, the best leaders out there lead by example, right? The best leaders are not afraid to roll up their sleeves and dig in and get dirty right along with the people that they're leading. I mean, that's the goal. If you're sitting behind your team and trying to lead from behind, only bad shit's going to happen, dude. That's no good. You're either next to them or in front of them. Those are the only two places you are as a leader. You got to be willing to get dirty right alongside them.
Are there moments though? I'm going to ask a question about that. Are there moments where you do step behind them and you say, okay, now it's your turn to lead? And
you're no longer the leader then.
Right. But is that from a long-term perspective, like I'm thinking about this group of guys I'm taking in Nepal, from a long-term perspective, I'd love for them to be the next set of leaders. So it makes me wonder if there are moments where I step back and say, okay, now it's your turn. You lead for a little bit.
Again, you're no longer the leader in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
You handed over the reins. You are no longer the leader. You are now part of that, and you're relying on them to lead you. So it's really understanding, are they going to fall into that? Which trap are they going to fall into, right? Are they going to fall into a trap and they're going to pull back and try to push their team forward? Are they going to step up alongside you and take the reins? Or are they going to get out front and truly lead? But in your role, if that happens, you're no longer the leader.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as I'm thinking about it, because there will probably be moments on this trip where I do step back out of that leader role, hand it off to somebody and say, okay, it's your turn to lead for the day. You go lead, because I want to prep you for what, if you come back and do this again next year, I want to prep you for that. But to your point, I can't hold on to the leadership reins if I'm going to do that. If I'm going to hand off the reins, it doesn't do me any good to hold on to them from the back. I get where you're going with this. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You know the old saying.
I never know where you're going to go with this when you go with, the old saying. So keep going.
The old Thomas Paine quote. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. Your only three choices.
It's a good quote.
And I usually put an expletive in there, but
that's the cleaned up version.
Right. That's the actual quote. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. And there's money in that quote, right? I mean, that is exactly what we're talking about here. You either are the leader, you're not, right? You're going to follow, or you're just going to get the hell out of the way. And and there's a lot to that, right? There's a lot to that statement. There are a lot of things in that quote that can be unpacked, right? I mean, that's a whole episode in and of itself. But for purposes of this conversation, right, it really is about leading and how to lead yourself to success and how to lead others. And I think the same attributes apply, whether you're leading yourself or you're leading a team. You gotta struggle, right? You got to find the struggle, and your team has to struggle. You can't do it for them. There's going to be times that they're going to hit the wall, and it's our job as leaders to help guide them past that, to guide them through that. Can't bust out the scissors and cut the cocoon away. We got to cheer them on, right? We got to guide them. We got to be by their side, cheering them on, letting them know that they can do it. They can accomplish this. They can get there. And I guarantee you, if you let the people that you're leading do that, they're going to be much better off in their life. If you're solving their problems for them all the time, it doesn't create long-term success. You might get that win short-term for your team, but you're not creating a team that can build and be on their own without you. And isn't that ultimately what we want to do, right? If we're in a position that you want to lead and elevate, then you have to create the team behind you that's going to be able to be self-sufficient. But they can only do that through the struggle. You can only grow through that struggle.
That's one of my biggest learnings on this trip, because I'm gone for like 10 days, is as a leader, have I created a team around me who, if I step out of that leadership position at Orange Ball, do things keep moving? Have I positioned them well so that things keep moving in my absence, and that when I come back, things have kept moving? And that's where if you're a leader who holds on to things too tight, then you're always stuck in that front leadership role, and you can never step out of it, even for 10 days, because the second you do, everything crumbles. That was the highlight of my trip last year, is when I came back and things just kept moving while I was gone. Probably one of the proudest moments of that trip was coming back and seeing my team continuing to do the things that we do every single day, even though I wasn't in my seat. It was freaking awesome. And I have a question for you that I'm curious about. So the leader, you lead yourself and you lead your team. My gut says that you can't lead a team if you're not leading yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
Agree?
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. I think we set the tone as individuals. Like, if I'm going to lead other people, I have to show them that I know how to lead myself first. And so I think that's a big part of this is you're going through and you're doing life and you're doing like these challenging things and you're setting goals and all of this stuff. If you want other people to follow you, you need to be somebody that shows up as worth following. And that starts with how you lead yourself. And people see that. That's the one thing I see it with my kids. My kids know how I lead myself. They see it every day. My wife does. The people that I work with do. People pay more attention to that than what we think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They sometimes see it before we even do. Right? How you behave, how you act, how you lead has an impact on others. And you can't do it if you're not, like you said, you can't do it if you're not leading yourself. If you're not finding those areas of uncomfortable, that you're in those positions where you're having the self-sabotage talk, the denial, the fear. If you're not in those places, how's anybody else ever going to get to them? How are you going to lead anybody else? How are you going to guide anybody else through that if you haven't experienced it?
Even to take that a step further, if you're not having those moments where a little bit of fear starts to creep in, or that self-talk, like, I don't know if I can do this, creep in, you're probably living pretty safe and not taking any risks. And your results are going to show that. 99% of the time, the best things in life come from taking some risk. And if you're not having those moments where things feel a little bit risky and a little bit shaky, you're probably not taking any risks, and you're probably not going to achieve the things you want because there's no stretch. It's one of those things to pay attention to. If you're not feeling a little bit of pressure and a little bit of discomfort, probably not making any moves that you're going to be excited about in a year.
If you don't have your shit straight and know where your path is and where you're going and what your goals are, and communicate those to your team, how are they ever to know where they're going? Right? Yes, we're on these journeys. Everybody's on their own journey. And, those steps, when you break down the goals, are going to be different for everybody. But when we're leading a team, the end goal is the same. But everybody's steps to get to that goal are going to potentially be different. Everybody's going to experience that pain, that uncomfortable differently, and at different aspects of it, right? Because we are all individuals. It's our goal as leaders to understand where those people are at in their journey and to help guide them.
Well, and it's just to tag onto that, it's fine if we all experience it in different ways. But to your point, as leaders, we need to be very clear on where we're going so that even as people are experiencing it in different ways and their path diverges and moves and shifts a little bit, or there's different uncomfortable things that pop up, we're all still aligned as to what our destination is.
Right. Exactly. And that's exactly what I said, right? The end goal is the same. And it's our job as leaders to understand everybody's going to take a different path, but we also have to recognize that that path isn't our path. And there are times where, they're going to go down a path that we've been down before, and don't jump in and solve it for them. Let them go through that, walk alongside them, help them understand which massive pitfalls not to step in. Still have the experience and gain the knowledge and move forward, right? As leaders, we have to kind of understand, we set the goal, but we have to understand how everybody on that team and is going to operate, because they're not all going to operate the same way we do. Their goals along the way, those mini goals, aren't going to be the same. They're all going to be at different phases. Everybody experiences those things different. It's our job as leaders to recognize that and help guide them through that.
That's something my dad was really good at. As you're saying that, he was good at identifying the massive pitfalls and keeping me out of the massive pitfalls. But he was also good at letting me run myself into the ditch from time to time and then claw my way back out. He protected me from the big pitfalls, but the ditches that I could get into and get back out of, he let me get pretty dirty at points to where he knew there were going to be lessons learned down in those ditches. And in the discomfort that I was creating for myself, he let that go. It would have been easy for him to put up 2 guardrails to my right and to my left that I would bump into to keep me out of the ditches all the time. He didn't do that. He let me get a little ragged every once in a while. And he would, if I asked him for help getting out of the ditch, he would help, but he also let me spend some time in the ditch when I needed to. So I got real familiar with what the ditch looked like and felt like. And I eventually decided I didn't want to go back in there. So,
right.
Yeah.
So the challenge this week for everybody listening is to think about those situations that you're in currently or have been in, as you're achieving your goal. Analyze them. Understand what was the conversation that you were having with yourself right on the cusp of success. Was everything good? Were you a little fearful of it? Were you uncomfortable with the feeling of that success, right, as you're stepping towards it? Were you having conversations of denial? Were you trying to sabotage yourself from taking that last step towards success? Analyze those situations. Think about them. Think about things that you can do different as you're moving forward. That's how we grow, right? We have to look back, but know that the only way is forward. And use those lessons from the past to pave your way forward.
Keep moving.
Right on. Well, you all know what you need to do. Get after it and make it a great day.
I love these conversations, man. I appreciate you.
Back at you, brother.
And that wraps it up for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the Grit Meets Growth tribe. And thanks for growing along with us and being part of this journey together. If you know someone who needs to hear the conversation we had today, please share it. If you got something out of this conversation, please leave us a review. And finally, if you want to make sure you don't miss future episodes, just remember to subscribe. We're thankful for each and every one of you. And as my co-host and good friend Chris Cathers always says, make it a great day.